You may remember from a previous video I've done called The Rake, where I started off saying there's something about this cryptid that gives me the shivers. Well, this is again another one that's absolutely terrifying and I never ever want to bump into. Any idea what this one could be? Well, it's called Windigo. In Ojibwe, which is an Algonquian speaking Native American tribe, they described it as the winter cannibal monster. But before I go into the Windigo and what it is, let me tell you about how it started and its origin. Going back to the Ojibwe, it started with the Native Americans. It all began in 1585 in the Algonquian speaking tribes. So Algonquian is a language in the Native Americans, and they were up north in America. This map best shows where they were located. So here all the coloured areas show where they were, and the names, as you can see there, is Ojibwe. They are the tribes. They said that this Windigo was a tall, giant, skinny, malnourished looking animal that was humanoid and had no lips, so it always had its teeth baring. It can also climb and swing through trees, and it is really quick doing so, and even on foot running. We've gone back to 1585 and spoke about the Algonquian speaking tribes, so that's where it originated. Did they spot one in the wild? Is it something where you can become one? Because we know Native Americans are very spiritual in set cases. So is it something along those lines? If you remember at the start of the video when I said the Ojibwe definition of the Windigo, it is the winter cannibal monster. They are also described as a person who is transformed due to consumption of flesh. The dots are starting to connect here, and it's basically if a Native American either is selfish, thinks about the Windigo or dreaming of the Windigo, or turns to cannibalism. So if someone's selfish, that happens a lot in life now. Thinking about a Windigo, I don't know where that would have started, but the cannibalism one, I mean, that's a bit extreme, isn't it? Surely no one would turn to cannibalism if you're Native American. They're all about communities and sharing and helping one another. But the North American tribes went through some really tough times. The winters that the Native Americans went through were really cruel. The lack of resources such as food and clothing would bring them down to starvation and hypothermia. So they were having to share what everyone had to make sure that everyone survived and got through the harshest of the winters. The Windigo is linked with winter. So we know that the Windigo will come when it's winter. And when are people going to most likely turn to selfishness and cannibalism? In winter, when they are starving and wanting to survive. So when Native Americans would sadly pass, people would turn to selfishness and take them and eat them just so they could survive. Whereas the community and the tribe weren't about that. They wanted to go out, try and get as much food as they can in a safe way and share it in the community so everyone had a bit and everyone would see it out. But obviously those people that managed to fall to the selfishness and the cannibalistic and they were thinking about being a Windigo, then they became one. And this would always happen in the winter when they were on the bare bones of their ass. So the dots are really starting to connect now. You become a Windigo when it's winter and you are struggling and turn to basically greed, selfishness and eating your own kind. And you transform into this horrible monster. When the Europeans went over to America and began the fair trade, they done a lot of trading with the natives due to them being very good hunters. So the Europeans would get the furs off them and give them money, food and other kinds of things. So due to this, they came into contact a lot and began to communicate. They also mentioned to the Europeans about the Windigo. And the Europeans connected the dots and linked it to one of our own, the werewolf, which I'll do a separate video about. And even the Europeans mentioned this in a book in the 18th century talking about what the Windigo would do. So there's the history of this absolute disgusting thing. So is there any sightings of it? Has anyone seen it? Is it still going to this day? The images I've shown throughout this video of this stag monster aren't actually the real images of what it should look like due to what the natives described it as and how I've described it. Even though the natives described this without stag antlers, they've now got stag antlers now, the Windigos, but that was due to a movie that came out in the 50s or 60s. And they had stag antlers, so now it looks like this kind of devil thing. But going back to what I said at the very start about the rake, is the rake a kind of Windigo? I don't know, but is there any sightings? Well, I think there is, but you're sadly going to have to wait for that for an upcoming video when I look at some sightings of the Windigo. But at least now we know the backstory. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments of any other cryptids or mythological legend kind of creatures you want me to cover. I really did enjoy looking up this Windigo and going down the Navajo kind of spiritual world and what it means. So while you're here, please check this video out and follow me while I hunt for paranormal sightings and events that are beyond belief.